So this is something we are talking about, 3-year project.
Yes, the PDF that I had sent to each of you outlines, very briefly outlines the idea for a preliminary project that would get a feel for the conception that we want to present in our new institute building, which we're looking to build. So this is testing the waters in a practical way, and the response from this preliminary project would help us to navigate going forward with the bigger project.
Great, great. And the institute is being built where?
Well, it's not being built yet. Nothing has actually started as far as buying land or anything. I have to be very transparent about that. But we plan to build it in Princeton. That's where we're based out of now.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, great.
And how long would it take to build? Have you had plans or anything approved for it?
We haven't had anything approved as far as land in Princeton, but we've had a professional architect that we've been talking to, and they've given us like a rough draft of what we would need, what things would cost, and how much land we would need, things like that. We have, based on that, we have a detailed budget online on the website. I can pull that up. But the main thing, we wouldn't worry about that quite yet. It would just be what's involved in this 3-year project, which is more contacting. We have our Kanapriya Devi Dasi coming. Dhanavat Kanapriya Devi.
Dhanavat pranams, everybody. Dhanavat Maharaj. Hare Krishna. How are you, Maharaj?
We are okay.
Okay.
You know Dr. Walton from London? Kanupriya,
I don't think
London.
we've met.
Dhanavat. Where in London?
Very nice to meet you here.
Yeah, where in London are you from?
No, I'm not in London. I'm based in Worcester, and I work at university in York.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
So I go to York when it's not COVID. I go to York about 1 week a month, and the rest I work from home.
Right, beautiful city.
It is a beautiful city. Yes, yeah. And where are you based?
South London, Crystal Palace. Yeah.
Yeah.
The outskirts. Yeah, right on the edge.
Very convenient for everything that's going on.
Yes.
So just in case not everyone is familiar with each other, I don't know if it would be good to just do a brief introduction. I can start with myself, if that's okay with everyone. Or Shanta Maharaj, actually, Maharaj, if you can start, if that's okay with you.
No, you start. You started. It will be good.
My name is Krishna Keshava Das. I'm here in the United States. We live in Ocean County, New Jersey, but we work out of Princeton, New Jersey. And we're here today to talk about this service project with the Bhakti Vedanta Institute. Whoever would like to go next.
Yeah, I can go. Balram Singh, I've been professor since 1990, taught for 25 years at the University of Massachusetts as a biophysical chemist. And but I also was a founding director of the center called Center for Indic Studies at the university, where I got more interaction with philosophical aspects of many traditions, including a lot of it from India, and then got very fascinated with some science of philosophy and philosophy of science kind of work, which is where I came to know of Dr. Shanta, and he has been to our town, which is south of Boston. It's actually, I live in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and I was very happy to last time they came, and I was able to cook for them.
We liked your preparation. We liked this preparation.
I do some projects in India. I come originally from a village, and I have a school and some other rural area projects there. And I've taken retirement from the university, but I run an institute of my own. You can see on the background, and in which I do, I have my basic area of research is Botox, some of you might know, for the last 34 years or so. And I'm doing I have a small biotech company, and I run that also. We just launched a product equivalent to Botox called Stanox in India. But I also run a school of Indic studies in which I do research on Ayurveda, yoga, and also we are doing some research on educational process, which I sometimes consult with Dr. Santa and all that as to how to build a new generation with a much better sense of themselves rather than what we have right now.
Very nice, Dr. Singh. Thank you.
Shall I go next?
Please.
Well, I'm Joan Walton. I'm from York St John University in the education faculty. I became acquainted with Dr. Shanta and Dr. Muni, Dr. Puri, how many years ago now? Quite some years ago, 5, 6 years ago. I got involved in an email conversation about consciousness, spirituality, and I've now presented at and attended about 4 of your science and scientist conferences, and Dr. Shanti and Dr. Muni have come over to the UK and presented at a conference of the Scientific and Medical Network, and so we've kept the contact over the years. My interest is interdisciplinary. I'm very interested in, as I said, spirituality and consciousness. I'm not attached to the Vedantic tradition, but I have got a strong sympathy, support for the principles, and interested in working with those of you who are more attached to that tradition.
Thank you, Dr. Walton. It's always very nice having your association at the conference in 2019. That's the only time I've gotten to meet you, but it was very nice.
And I too met your parents, and I always say hi to your parents,
yes,
because it's lovely to meet them too. So please pass on the fact that I have mentioned them. They're lovely people.
Thank you.
I guess I can go next. My name is Leonel Palacios. I currently work at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory as a physicist. And,
well, we can't hear you well, sir. We can't hear you well. If you could be a bit louder. At least I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Leonel Palacios. I'm currently working at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory as a physicist. And I met Maharaj here at Princeton at the Bhakti Vedanta Institute. And since then, he has been, my guru. And it's been, so far, a great path.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Should I go next?
Yes, Dr. Sandeep. Yes, please.
My name is Sandeep Mishra. I'm professor of cardiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, India. I think I know Shantaji and Muniji, I think maybe nearly a decade, I think, in involved with their teachings as well as their philosophy. I'm basically a practicing clinical interventional cardiologist, but I'm interested in a lot of education. So currently I'm working on how to change medical curriculum and make it more useful for the doctors who come up, particularly in context with empathy, and trying to get in philosophy and arts into the medical curriculum. So this is one of the clinical areas I'm interested in, other than spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra.
Yeah, Didi, would like to introduce?
Dhanyavad, Maharaj. Yeah, my name is Kanupriya. I'm a disciple of Dr. Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj. I've been in the mission since 1996, and I had the good fortune of meeting Santa Maharaj and Muni Maharaj. Trying to think which year it was now, Maharaj. 2000. maybe like 4 years ago or so in England, like when they came to England. So I'm an artist, practicing artist and teacher, and I very much I'm very interested in bringing the arts and the visual arts in with the concepts of Vedanta, and working with you as a group, and Madhava Puri Maharaj and Krishna Keshava Das, in some way. I know.
Sorry.
My humble self is Bhakti Niskama Santa, and by the order of my gurus, Vishnu Srila Bhakti Sri Damodar Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Madhav Puri Maharaj, we are trying to humbly present the Vedantic philosophy to the scientists in a language that they can understand and appreciate. And in that context, under the direction of Sripad Puri Maharaj, we have organized an institute called Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Institute. In that banner, under that banner, and the Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute, in association and collaboration with and other organizations also, academic organizations, we are organizing conferences and various educational programs, which will create a dialogue, healthy dialogue between science and religion, to appreciate more deeper concept of reality than a superficial understanding of life as some atoms and molecules, the concept of consciousness, soul, and the organic holism and subjective evolution of consciousness. All these topics that we are trying to present to the academic scholars, students, and we appreciate all of your cooperation and encouragement in that direction. That's all I can say about my humble self. Thank you.
So I'll share the screen of the PDF that I had forwarded to everybody. And I was hoping if you all would mind sharing your thoughts about what's presented here. I can go over it first. I'll read it aloud. So following is an outline of the 3-year project, which will assist in assessing the modern scholarly and scientific community's response to the concepts which the Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute plans to present within its large-scale service project, a new institute building. So what we have presented here is a 3-year project, and each year builds upon the work done in the previous year. So the first year would be starting with, and this is based off of actually the Sadhu Sangha Google group, where Sripad Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj here, and our Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj and Sripad Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj engage with many different scientists and scholars about the synthesis of science and religion, about consciousness studies, about the development of materialistic science to include not just reductionistic concepts of life, and various many topics. So this first year's work is based off of some of the conversations that have been had there, where it's been mentioned that science, modern science, is not responsible for inquiring about truth. So I'll go ahead and read this now. Year 1, evaluations at 4 U.S. and 4 international universities, distributed to both students and professors. We have a list here of some of the universities we'd like to reach out to. University of Chicago, University of California, Berkeley, Rutgers University, Arizona State University, York St. John University, in the UK, which is the school of Professor Walton here, St. Petersburg University in Russia, the Seoul National University in South Korea, and the Ames College, the Ames or IIT in India. Professor Mishra is a faculty at Ames, and Sripad Shanta Maharaj is an alumni of IIT. And what we'd like to ask them are the questions here. So what is knowledge and how is it acquired? What are qualities such as humility, tolerance, and respect relevant to the acquisition of knowledge? Is modern science responsible for seeking the truth of reality? Why or why not? What is the relationship between mind and matter from the perspective of modern science? What is the meaning of having holistic vision or utilizing a holistic approach? Is this relevant to the modern scientific approach and to modern scholarship in general? And based upon empirical observation, is it more rational to conclude that life comes from life, known as abiogenesis, or that life comes from, that life comes from matter, which is abiogenesis, or that life comes from life, biogenesis? And so everything here is just what I could present with my very limited capacity. And I'm here humbly asking from all of you qualified and experienced individuals from various backgrounds, what you think of these questions, how you think they will be received. I'm assuming it would be received questioningly, no doubt, but if you think it would be effective to ask professors and students these questions, and just any other thoughts that you might have about this first step.
Can I say something?
Please.
So this is regarding question number 4.
Okay.
I think, if you give it to lay people, like for example, I may say that if you give it this question to faculty and students at AIMS, they would have difficulty understanding what you exactly mean by this question. Maybe if you could rephrase it or, make it a bit simpler. I don't know, because other questions are quite, I'm sure people will understand and will be able to respond to it. But to me, this question number 4 seems a bit.
So the background of this question 4 is about Descartes' dualism. How, modern science has pretty much developed from Descartes' dualism of matter and mind being separate. And our position is that that goes against what our direct experienced reality is, in addition to the position of other philosophers such as Spinoza, Hegel, Kant, that matter and mind are directly related. In fact, all matter is being directed by mind. So we're trying to ask them we're trying to ask the question in an unbiased way without having our position like hidden in the question. What do you think the relationship between mind and matter are? So how else could we rephrase that? I'm not sure.
I would like to say, I mean, it will be difficult sometimes, perspective, I think, Professor Mishra is coming from a medical perspective, and that is a difficult thing because the mind is psychological stuff and matter is very different. But I just want to refer to this written by the book written by, I use this in my class that I taught, a course actually in University of Massachusetts, named as Chemistry of the Mind, and it is a graduate course that has its own name and number. So that at least in a major university that has been accepted as a real issue. And this book is written by, I just happen to have it actually next to my desk, written by a physicist. I think, but this kind of information will be needed. What Professor Mishra is talking about, so that especially the people who are in medical community or even biological community, I think they will like to know that this is a very important issue that being addressed by scientists at a very fundamental level as to how the matter appears. I mean, I'm just only talking about scientific perspective. I don't know about how people will take it philosophically. That's an issue that needs to be addressed, and I think somehow the people need to come to some kind of closure to address the question at least.
I mean, what I meant was that if it could be phrased in a manner which would be simpler for lay people to understand. So who are not too much into philosophy. I mean, those kind of people, something which they can directly relate to and understand what it means. So, I mean, of course, I understand what you have explained, but it will take some time to explain it to regular people. So I don't know if you can phrase it in a different manner so that it is quite clear what you exactly mean.
If we ask, are mind and matter connected, would that be better?
I think so.
Okay.
is mind a part of matter, or matter a kind of part of mind, or something like that? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have a very good replacement for this one, or a good alternative for this one. But I think other questions are people will understand, but this one I think they will not exactly understand, and then there is no point in getting an answer to it if they don't understand.
Sure.
Perhaps you can also add a brief preamble before each question so that you introduce the person to the question if you are using complicated concepts like mind and matter. So maybe put just a couple of, maybe 1 or 2 lines giving a little introduction, and then you pose a question. That could be also a nice option, especially for students.
Dr. Walton has sent a message that I have a notice on my computer saying the meeting host will let me in soon. So can you let her in?
Yeah. Let's see. She should be able to come in.
Also, slight suggestion from my side, if you could make all these questions a bit simpler. So, they might be very accurate from the point of view of philosophical concepts, but for a common man to understand very quickly, you plan to give it to all the teachers and all the faculty and all the students, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, we'd like to specifically give it to the science and philosophy majors, especially, and also anyone else who would be willing to take it for sure. But
sorry, you said you wanted to give it to only people who are in philosophy?
No. We'd like to give it to people who are specifically studying science, various natural sciences, and philosophy specifically, in addition to whoever else would be interested in taking it.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So so they are phrased in a very technical philosophical language, maybe. So it could be simplified for understanding of common individuals. I don't know. I'm sorry, but
all this input is very helpful. So
because people will respond to a survey kind of questionnaire only if they can do it very quickly. So they need to understand quickly and then respond. So things which are very complicated, most people will not respond, I feel. Because we do some medical surveys as well, and complicated things people don't.
I have a feeling that this is not for survey. My understanding is this is from something to get deep into examining, rather than this is not being distributed, I believe, to ask people what their answers, but it is for something for them to consider as a part of investigation for the future, to come up with some kind of terms with these issues in their profession, whether it's medical profession or science or philosophy, that kind of thing. It's not. I think Professor Mishra, if I'm wrong, maybe somebody can explain. My understanding is that this is the question being posed for professors and students to consider as part of their investigation in whatever field they are. If I'm in protein field, for example, I work, so I'm going to try to find out some answers to some of these things. If I'm just a scientist, I'm going to try to approach with humility. Humility is very important. Humility in a sense, like we are, some of us obviously are scientists here. Most of us are scientists here. So we have to be objective at least, And objectivity means respect to everybody else's perspective, and also many other perspectives that we need to consider ourselves, rather than, we have one hypothesis and say, well, I'm just going to prove that. So that kind of a approach is important. I think it's more for those of us who are practicing scientists, who are interested in such questions in our own field, rather than looking for answers from survey as to what they answer in one line or two lines. I think the Krishna Keshav ji can explain if the intention is something else.
Yes, so here we're saying evaluations. When I was trying to put this together, I was reading about the difference between survey and evaluation, and it was saying how survey is more of a quick thing where you give them the survey, they give your answers, and you say thank you and walk away. And then evaluation was something where you might have a little bit of a dialogue between the two, or there's a follow-up. At least there's a follow-up with the people who filled out the evaluations to talk about the material further. And so our intention here is to go deeper with the people, not just make them aware of these things, for 10 minutes and then never show up again. Our intention is to introduce these things through a question, and then hopefully have more dialogue, have a symposium with them, as we'll see in year 2, and then later on in year 3, we have this multimedia artistic representation of these things, and we're trying to present these deeper conceptions, which we'll talk about later, in a visual way. So we're trying to use this year 1 as just the first engagement. Here are these questions. We're going to come back and talk to you more about them later. So that's the intention behind it.
So basically, what you mean is, if you first select people whom you want to give this evaluation, and then, out of them, some will respond that way. So we are not thinking of, broad-based kind of thing. We're focusing or select individuals, right?
Yeah, maybe we can, like, if we distribute to 300
and then basically
people and we
through
get 100
this
people to fill out, something like that.
Then it's okay, but still I would say question number 4, if you could rephrase.
Sure. And then Lionel was saying, include some kind of introduction to each question to unpack it a bit. That might also be a helpful approach. So we're taking note of all these things. So if there's anything else anyone wanted to comment about this year 1.
I think all the questions, if you present simultaneously, it will be bombardment of too many things at once. So I think we have to take one question at a time, with people, and I think in that way we can create some kind of dialogue between what is the views that they are presenting, and then some discussion can be made on that. Not that just everybody gives their views, but they have to also come together to discuss what will be the more rational view, what each academic place they are coming consensus with, and that can be some discussion on that will be good. Arrange a discussion on that, on each question.
So will it be these questions are given and answers are written, or it's a dialogue kind of thing?
The intention was for it to be written, for it to be a written thing in the beginning, and then to have in year 2. In year 2, we have now we have these results. We talked to, we had 100 people from 4 different universities in the US, 100 people from 4 different international universities have these 10 questions. Here is their answer to the question. And this is what it reflects about the general current mindset of students of the modern day. And here's how that general mindset compares to how we think we can make the situation better for a more inclusive, holistic science. And then we talk about those results in year 2 with the papers, which are written about the evaluation, about that whole evaluation that we did. And then we do the symposiums to then dive deeper into those subject matters with the people who we distributed the evaluations to. That was the idea.
Can I ask, is this a research project then? A kind of action research project?
So you're evaluating the state of knowledge. You're then going to share some knowledge with them, do some teaching, and then evaluate what they say afterwards. I'm sorry, my computer just went completely, so I've lost quite a lot of what you said at the beginning.
No problem.
But is that the intention?
So in year one, we plan to ask them these questions with the intention of following up with symposiums to present new information to them and to discuss, you know, how this is either in opposition to what you're currently thinking, or how to harmonize what you're currently thinking within a broader perspective that is more holistic. And then in year three, we are intending to present in a creative way this whole idea that we have about the subjective evolution of consciousness through multimedia pieces. And the idea that we discussed here, we have, you know, as an example, Plato's cave. You know, that's a very visual way of understanding, coming out of ignorance into truth, and the stages of that progression that's, you know, laid out very visually in Symposium there by Plato. So that's one example of how we can create something visual that people can engage with in not just an intellectual way, but a physical way. And that's like a new kind of learning that we're trying to facilitate. And so ultimately, this is all about trying to help people to develop spiritually also. Both Plato and Aristotle talked about this idea of catharsis, this cleansing, this purification in order to have real knowledge about reality. So Plato talks about how it's necessary for, through two different avenues, for people to see what they're doing wrong. How are they thinking in a wrong way? How are they thinking in a limited way? One way is through direct scolding. You know, someone scolds them, oh, you're thinking wrong, don't think like that, think like this. The other way is for them to see the fallacies of their own thinking and then realize, oh, okay, there must be a better way. So they're cleansing, this catharsis, this ethical cleansing. They're developing these virtues of humility, tolerance, giving respect through this culture of acquiring knowledge. Because, right, in a broad sense, the modern culture of acquiring knowledge does not so much embrace humility, giving respect to others, and tolerating other views that are not so in line with your own. It's almost the exact opposite. And our position is that due to that culture of acquiring knowledge and this very, with all this animosity, it's actually preventing individuals from acquiring real knowledge of reality. So
can I ask, who are the students? I mean, who are they that you're talking about who are on the receiving end of this?
Yeah, so here we have a list. We would like to give the evaluation at 4 US universities and 4 international universities. And then we would distribute it among the students and professors there. You know, so we're hoping to, let's say, get 100, 100 people fill out this evaluation at each of these universities, and then have further dialogue with them. So they would be who we're looking to talk to.
Well, that's quite a challenge in itself. I mean, so just because you've asked me, because I'm from York St John, you would be asking me to identify 100 students from York St John who would be prepared to participate in this project.
To an extent.
Yeah.
Basically, on an average, 15 evaluations per site.
15 evaluations. Okay. You all know, are very experienced in this. I'm very naive in all of this. So saying 100 is very naive of me to say that. As professionals and as qualified individuals, you know much better what is more realistic to do.
Basically, I think we need to define, because, from our place, I imagine I could get about at least 25 or so. So, but, so this is my thing, but I don't know about other places. But then I think we need to define, the upper limit and lower limit from every institution, I guess. because otherwise it would be too much skewed. So suppose some place gets too many and others get too few, then the data will be bit, I don't know. I mean, from purely scientific point of view, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, first of all, we need to decide on number, whether it's 100 or 200 or what exactly you want.
And would they need to be already signed up to the university? I mean, I don't mind having an involvement in my role as the university in a research stroke educational project, but I don't really, I mean, people sign up to the university to do other subjects, to do other projects. Does it have to be people who are students at the university, or I mean, Dr. Shanta knows the Scientific and Medical Network, for example, and I may be more able to get people who are interested through that medium. So is it important that it is people who are, one, is it important that it is people who are already attending university? And secondly, what age range do you have in mind? Can it be any age?
Our intention for this was for the report to reflect students, modern students from any upper, from 18 to 25 through for undergrad and graduate school. What is their mode of thinking? How do they think reality operates? We're looking to get an idea of that. So it would be students, both undergrad and graduate.
Well, if I tell you that all my students are over 40.
Yeah. Okay. That's.
I only teach doctoral students.
Okay.
So, and they're all mature. I mean,
That's fine.
So I think that's why I'm asking. You don't have an age limit on this?
No.
No.
Basically, honestly, I would agree with ma'am, because, younger people are not too much concerned about get anything out of them. But if you look at older people, they are the ones who are stopping and trying to look back at certain things and trying to, evaluate their own life and what life means and other things. And those issues are, I think, more important to rather senior people. So, so that's my opinion. I don't know how all of you feel about it.
What I was thinking, that instead of restricting in terms of age, if you are saying that it is for undergraduate or graduate students, like that will be good, because you can find age different age people are there in even different programs. There are varieties of students of different age actually. So can you hear me?
Well, I mean, I ran a conference last week on research, spirituality, and professional practice, and there were about 140 people there, and but they were all, and they may well be interested in these kind of ideas, but as Professor Mishra said, they tend to be older. The people who are interested in these things, exploring these things. I personally would not be able to engage students, undergraduates, because I have no involvement with undergraduates or even very many younger people.
Then that would be a part of the results. Then that if the people who are willing to participate and engage with this actively are older individuals who are engaged in academic study, then that's a part of the results then.
So we'll try everybody, but my sort of feeling is that more people towards that other side will be interested in these issues. Let us see. We will try. We'll see what comes out.
So so as far as if we can close on this year one, then I'll try to correct this fourth question, make it sound a little easier to understand, and try to add a little introduction to each question, and then I can share it again with all of you, and then perhaps we can move forward on trying to distribute these to various student bodies of any age. And then
sounds great.
Okay, well, yeah.
If that's okay, please, anything, Dr. Walton.
If I were going to be involved, it would be, this is a kind of research, really. So you're evaluating people's knowledge, you're giving some input, information, and then you're re-evaluating their knowledge. That's your purpose, isn't it? Is that right? Have I understood that right? The third, it would be about re-evaluating how they see things once they've received the
Also what I, yeah.
So to answer your question, Dr. Walton, after this first evaluation, asking these questions and then trying to engage with them later on with the symposium to discuss what we found through that evaluation and how we think a better direction may be created. As far as this is concerned here, we wouldn't then do another reevaluation after that. Okay. It would just be this first evaluation to get a sense of how they think and then talk about that based on the things that we're trying to teach and present in year 2. And then finally come back to those same places with this physical representation. And then again, the reason behind all this is this physical representation of these concepts is what we're going to present in the institute building itself that we're looking to build. So the whole aim here is to get a feel for how are people receiving this, what kind of change can it make. You know, we're not gonna, we didn't plan to evaluate that to then follow up with them after year 3. Okay, now that you've been exposed to the symposiums and the dioramas, have you changed your mind? Do you think differently? We weren't thinking of that.
Okay, well, if I, in my role, if I were to be involved in this from my York St John perspective,
yes,
this would need to be created as a research project. Okay. So there would be an overall kind of question: what are our aims? What are we aiming to do? And then I would need to be able to put that through my ethics committee for their approval that it's ethical, which wouldn't be very problematic because we're not working with vulnerable groups or young children. And then I would then ask for volunteers. I then need to have a very clear idea of what the project was that you're inviting people to be involved in. I couldn't just send out questions for people to answer without being very clear from the start what the purpose of the project was and gaining their permission before they started engaging with the project. So I'd need to be inviting them to be part of this project, and I'd need to be very clear what the purpose of the project was and what the implications for them were, what the possible benefit for them were, what we were asking for them, and then they would need to sign a permission form before they could move on any further. I'm just saying, being very practical about what would be necessary if I were to be part of a project like this.
That's very helpful, Dr. Walton. That's exactly what we're hoping to achieve here. This, like I said before, this is all based on my very naive, my side. So now I'm trying to talk with all you qualified individuals to see the practicality of this, who are engaged working in the universities, working in the different fields. And that's exactly what we're looking to clarify here.
So what I would ask of you then is, what is your research question? What are you aiming to achieve and how are you aiming to achieve it? And if you could just do a very brief summary, then I could look at it and see how that could work. And sure. who I might then be able to invite to be involved. See, what are you aiming in this research? What are you aiming to learn? What are you aiming to achieve? That kind of thing. I can get a sense of it, but I think it needs a much clearer shape to it.
We will definitely work on that and get that back to you for sure. Is there anything else?
That makes sense to the rest of you? Does that? I mean, what am I saying? Is it does it make sense? What I'm suggesting?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's exactly where I was driving to as well. Maybe I have to discuss with whether we do require a consent form, etc. We have to do it as a research study, or can we, bypass that route and just do it informally? I have to check on that at my place. But if things are done that way, I think it will be much easier for me as well. So I'm sure. I mean, I could, as I said, I could just do it as an informal discussion among individuals, and rather than framing it as a research project. But I have some work to do on that.
Well, I know that I would need to put, if this was a research
I
book,
understand
I would
completely.
absolutely need to put it through the ethics
Yeah.
committee. And
That's
also, the nature of the project. I mean, if we're going to do this in a way that many people will be attracted to, I think the research question and what we're asking and why we're asking it will be very important, because I can see that there'd be some things that I have people I know who could be very interested in being involved, but there might be another way of phrasing the project and they just think it's not for me. So how we
what I feel one of the major goal is that modern science is going towards some revolution in thinking about certain topics. Like before they were more focused about some fixed concept of idea of matter, in terms of some unchangeable hard stuff that they were talking about particles and things like that. But now they are going into a domain of studying the knowledge of that object, then a fixed object, as we see. And also the consciousness studies are also picking up one of the central point of focus. So in that context, some of these questions which were not so much seriously asked to the students to inquire about. So we want to create a more deeper inquiry about these questions, which is necessary as far as the state of modern scientific research is concerned. That's what I feel.
I mean, as I understand it, and I mean, it's one of the reasons why I got into dialogue with you in the first place, to use my language, is that we're exploring the idea of going beyond a post-materialist science. So we're talking about challenging the materialist worldview, introducing the idea of a post-material science in which ideas of consciousness or consciousness may be primary or universal or fundamental. So the nature of consciousness is not an emergent property of the brain, but consciousness is infinite and eternal. And so I think it's those are the kind of basic, we all have different ways of phrasing that, but the central aspect of it is we're seeking to find ways to move beyond, to move into a post-materialist science. Would that agree with what you're saying, Dr. Shanta? That would be the kind of...
That's correct. That's correct, actually.
So I think that's the idea, the concept that unites us. And then beyond that, we have different ways of seeing it and understanding it. But that's
this type of thinking is not being seriously some inquiries raised in our university curriculum and things like that. So this work will be helping towards that cause, actually.
Well, it's certainly the work I'm involved in here, and it's the work of the Scientific and Medical Network and David Lorimer, whom you know about, and we're working very hard to look at the implications of a post-materialist science, and now we're looking at the implications of that within arts and humanities. So the whole essential, the aim of it, the overall aim is very, very similar, and it's very challenging, certainly in the Western world, because people are very, very attached to various forms of materialism, in which ideas of the transcendent, however we understand that, ideas of spirituality or ideas of the transcendent have just got lost. There's a great gap. So, but I think people are potentially interested in it. I mean, I do have mature students, they're in the 50s, but, and we had the conference last week. People do realize that there's a big gap and are interested in exploring
you know, ideas of the spiritual.
And also, if you see the field of biology and medical science, you know, the cell biology has created some, you know, revolutionary change of our, you know, idea about organism and life. And that also, one of the main, you know, thing which the mainstream, you know, the syllabus and things like that that is being taught to the students does not address. So, you know, this type of, you know, work will help, you know, raise that type of, you know, frontier works, you know, the questions and, you know, the topics that they're addressing, that students also will start inquiring about that, and we also know where they stand in that, in the context.
If I can say a few words, I think we are probably going it in the wrong way. If that were the purpose, I think I kind of agree with Dr. Walton. You really need to engage people who will be like a research project. So survey is probably, I mean, you already have an idea what you want, where you want to go. You probably, I somehow misunderstood it. See, if you're, maybe we are pretending to give an idea to people that we are going to do a survey, and from there we are going to come up with some questions that can be addressed. Because it seems like we already have an idea what we want to be addressed. And so it will be better to have a research project, and where you be involved people who are already engaged in some way. Maybe some other people who may be on the margins. I mean, we all have our own colleagues who may not be thinking exactly like that, but, you know, one could consider some questions. So because you want to really go deeper, if you just want to have a discussion conference or something, which I think I've participated several, at least a few, not several. Dr. Santa and group has, Bhakti Vedanta group has science and scientists. We have engaged few people, I think, but we probably want to go deeper into it, where people collect data. So it may be, if you have a research group, if I have a research group that I want to pursue something about consciousness and beyond the matter, or we need to integrate the consciousness in my protein research or Ayurvedic herbal research that I do, and I need to consider that. If the Professor Mishra's institution obviously is one of the premier institutions in India about medical science, and there is so much work being done now that in addition to material drugs that we gave and diagnostics, I think you need to, I mean, the entire placebo effect stuff is really part of it. So I think you really need to engage people in deeper research. The question that for me is then how we incentivize them to do it. You know, why would someone try to do? Now you are going to try to open an institute. That if this kind of research will take, you know, 4 or 5 years before you can get to somewhere. Maybe you want them to be part of an institute, kind of adjunct of some kind, to be part of the conversation that you want to have. So that's a little bit different than, you know, doing a survey to find out what the people think, and then we will come up with an idea to pursue, because we kind of already know what the issues are. So survey is just maybe to get people become more aware of it. Maybe some more people can be recruited to do research in this area, get more people involved. So, you know, that's how I think now, you know, now that I understand where things really going with it, and it really requires deeper involvement of people collecting data. And, you know, you may have to go through IRB if you're really going to do some people directly involved, but then there will be a research, like, you know, for example, I'm trying to do a research how the cells, my cell cultures respond to season. I am having the same lab conditions. They don't know, the lab condition doesn't know that what is the season outside, but there is a different time of the year. I want to see whether the cytokines being released or gene expressions are being done are going to be different, even though my lab conditions are exactly same, but conditions outside. So consciousness may be of that kind. I'm just giving my example. So I don't need permission IRB to do something like that. But if you have to really involve human beings and not just, they do some research or write a survey, probably that's not a big deal. But if you really engaging them to be part of long-term thing, and you really need to have these students who fill out your survey, attend your symposium, and then be involved in doing some research. Because if they are going to be different, then it doesn't serve the purpose. I mean, that's just maybe my 2 cents.
So if I can just interject, as far as discussing what will be necessary to practically go about asking these questions to the students at various institutions, we've heard so much amazing input from everybody, and it's clear that we need to have a little more clarification, perhaps in the way that Dr. Walton had presented, and then I can structure it in that way, clarify some things so you understand our intentions better, and then we can perhaps meet again to discuss that. I wanted to just shift to this year 3, which talks more about the artistic output of what we're looking to do, because I know not everyone can stay so much longer.
Can I just ask one very quick practical question?
Yes.
In this project, are you hoping to gain income, or are you funding this project, or are you hoping to come out, with not spending, not gaining money, just everybody contributing their time and goodwill? So, I mean, that will make a huge difference to what is achievable.
We're not looking to make an income from this. We understand that there's obviously going to be many expenses, and we have these grants that we plan to apply to from like the Templeton Foundation, for example, and so that's how we plan to fund these things. We understand that, I don't know the expenses yet of having to give the evaluations out, but obviously as far as creating artistic structures that are mobile, that we can present to different institutions, that will have probably a significant expense. And I'm ignorant to the rest of the expenses, which I hope to find out as we discuss and clarify more. But our plan is to apply for a grant from Templeton, among other places, perhaps also the National Endowment for the Humanities here in the States, to fund what we need to present these ideas. But we're not looking to make an income.
Okay. I mean, you've answered a question so do you know anyone in the Templeton Foundation? Because to apply to Templeton is hugely ambitious. But I mean, so if you were going to do a proper funding, interdisciplinary and international, global, that's a very, very good starting point. And that it could become quite interesting if you were going to collaborate in across disciplines and across international boundaries, which
is our intention.
Of course, that's what you're doing here. Yeah. Okay. Do you know anybody within Templeton? Is anybody within Templeton supporting this?
We don't, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Right. Yeah. I get the idea then. Sorry, I interrupted, but that's such an important question, really.
Thank you for asking, for sure. So just now to maybe spend the last few minutes here, 15 minutes, 10 minutes here, discussing year 3. So the 3 ideas that we have here, just to paint the picture, are Plato's Cave, which I already described, which shows the succession of coming out of ignorance into truth. Also, we have this whole metaphor that you may have heard from us at one of the conferences, this elephant and the blind men. You have these 7 blind men all feeling different parts of the elephant without knowing that they're touching an elephant. And one man thinks he's touching a tree trunk, but it's really the elephant leg. One thinks it's a snake, but it's the elephant trunk. One thinks it's a fan, but it's the elephant's ear, etc. And it's a metaphor for without having a concept of the whole, you empirically analyze the parts, and your conception of what it is far from the truth. So how we can create a sensory engagement experience for people to see that on their own. I don't know how exactly we would do that, but that's one idea of how to bring this into a physical experience for people. And so it's actually just these 2 things. So being outside in this elephant and the blind man, Plato's Cave, and this other example, Chinese beating a gong to make the moon dog stop eating the sun god. This example that Sripad Bhaktimadhava Puri uses which is very nice to illustrate how just because something appears to work doesn't mean it actually corresponds to reality. Every time they beat the gong, the eclipse stops, but it doesn't mean that it's because they're beating the gong that the eclipse stops. That's just their perceived reality, but it's not actually true. So if any ideas that you may have about how to illustrate that reality is not just confined to how we think it works, to our limited experience, that it's beyond that, if you know anyone who's working with this kind of idea in their art, or if you have any ideas yourself, I know this is very different from what many of us are used to doing, but this is one big aspect of the project.
I just have a small comment. I don't know if you have looked at Japanese koans. Are you aware of them? They
What
are,
is it?
Japanese koans.
Quants. Huh.
Koan, koan, Japanese koan. So the kind of stories that you describe, they are really classical stories. One of them is, I don't know whether it's a Vedantic story, but it's a Buddhist story, that elephant and different parts. And the other one is, I think, Plato. And but there are a lot of koans, and I'm sure if you go to net, you might find some of them. There are books on. So Japanese Zen Buddhists have pondered on these examples, actually, of how to make people aware of reality in a different, way of telling stories or things like that. They are, very interesting ones. So if you're not aware of them, I would suggest you, try to look at some of them, because they might be very useful in, we are discussing here.
Sure, I haven't heard of that before, so thank you for recommending that.
So it's basically, if you look at Zen Buddhists and you look at some of these koans, they are very interesting. They are very, very, brief stories, actually. And I can, narrate some of them, but I'm sure, it would be a waste of time. So it's better that you go through them, and then you will, sort of, and they try to explain, a lot of them deal with how to face death. So that is what they deal with. And, and there are so many other concepts that are there. If you want, I can maybe send you some links, and you can
If you wouldn't mind, that would be helpful, Dr. Mishra.
Sorry?
If you wouldn't mind, if you could send anything that you had already.
Yeah, I would. Sure. I have some of them. So I will. They are very good, actually. They are already done by the Zen Buddhists, and they are Japanese. They are translated in English, of course.
Great.
I find the science uses a lot of these things, knowing full well that's not reality. As an example, benzene ring, or where where it came from, Kekule's dream that he saw, that the snake is eating its own tail. And we in sciences, in chemistry, we obviously accept that. And the benzene ring, we don't really know that. We don't know the electron really moving around. We just know we can find them wherever. So symbolism is a very important, I think whatever you're talking about, everything is in some form symbolism, not reality, but perceived reality. Even in science, we have only perceived reality, like, simple thing like chemical structures. They're just perceived reality. They're not real. We all know that's not real, but that's just, it works. If you extrapolate that to biology, then you find actually how we feel. There is plenty of examples where how we feel is what more real than what may be reality. So you put all kind of symbolism where people, like I said, placebo effects is something that's very well documented, and I think there should be some research on that, because that is mostly perceived reality. I mean, the drug is perceived reality. So the reality is not there. It's just the perception, which is what people get affected biologically. So, I mean, there couldn't be closer than that. I mean, yeah, of course, philosophical examples are very good to understand that, that perception is important. But I think Perception in physiology is very important, and you can measure it. You can measure the physiology only by making people to perceive that's not real, but just perception. The example of snake and the rope is always given in Vedantic discourses. You know, it depends on whether you think the rope is snake, and then you react, and every physiology changes in your body, and you think that that's what it is. So I think some of the, if you also included some discussion in addition to these artistic things, maybe some scientific models whereby people, you can make scientific measurement to simply say that that's not reality, but you can see the scientifically this is what you see. And to consider that to be real is probably a fallacy of some kind.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. And another part of this is there's a whole psychological science behind all of these visual illusions that we see. Like, for example, last year, I think, or a few years ago on the internet, there was a picture of something that could either be perceived as blue or yellow, and some people only saw it as yellow, some people only saw it as blue, but everyone was looking at the same picture, and it was like quite amazing how so many people could see something very different looking at the same image. And there are many examples, many examples of this, where you can look at a picture, see the duck or the rabbit, see the old woman, the profile of an old woman, or a young lady looking back behind her. So many examples of this, and I'm not familiar with the psychological science behind it, but also if any of you may know someone who is well versed in that, they may be a huge asset to understand how to go about this aspect of the project more effectively. We'll also do our part, of course, trying to contact individuals and find out more about them, but it would be very helpful because there's a, you know, that science is there. So if there's any other input anyone has, please, please say anything you need, or we can end here if anyone else doesn't have anything to say. And
you wanted to discuss something about artistic thing, right?
well, just as much as we said already is helpful, I think, for now.
And Kanupriya not saying anything.
She's listening. She has.
I'm listening, Maharaj. Yeah, I very interesting subject, and I was just thinking, in terms of these things also, when you have those, when people can be interactive, there's sometimes those simple, I just messaged Krishna Keshavadas about it, just the simple senses, like when you have a bag and you have to feel in the bag, like what's that, what's in the bag, without seeing. So you're relying on just one sense, for instance, or when people have to taste something with their eyes shut, or or like Krishna Keshavadas was talking about, something visual that has two images or something, there's two aspects to it. What do you see, or does something, do you need some it's like being aware of something. If someone mentions something to you and then suddenly you're aware of it, but without that indication, people don't generally always see things. So I think those kind of really practical, interactive experiments, really make you aware of, our the defects of the senses and how they can be obscured. Just a thought, but I think it's nice when we can get people interactive with something. Just the thought as you're talking.
Another thing is about the sounds, how we can incorporate sounds. I know there used to be a show where they would play, I forgot what it was called exactly, but they used to have a sound, and people would guess what that sound was, and it would really sound like that, what they were guessing, but it turned out to be something completely different.
Yes.
And I think here in the States, there's a Liberty Science Museum, and I was there quite a few years ago, and they had this one thing where there were these two seats with a semicircle behind them, very big. I don't know the material they were made of. It was maybe about 10 yards apart. And you'd have two people sitting there. One person would just talk in a normal voice, and then the person all the way 10 yards away would hear them as if they were right next to them. So that's another, you know, all these fragments of these are all fragments of ideas right now, of course, but we're just trying to.
I wanted to also give one example. Like if you put a stick in the glass of water, it looks as if it is in a bend. I think Balram Singh has to leave.
Yeah.
Namaste, namaste, Dr. Balram Singh. Thank you for participating. So, namaste.
I've seen that one. Yeah.
You can see that the stick is bent, and when you touch, you see that it is straight. Okay. So, which sense perception you will give importance, the seeing or the touching? Or some other faculty that you should give importance to. Which sense perception you will give importance to? So, what is the way we come to judge the knowledge actually? So these things, has to be, some more such example has to be thought out. And when we give some questions to people in a pictorial form, I think Kanupriya can think of, and we can supply some ideas that will be good. She can present it pictorially, which can be given to the audience or the people who we are evaluating. Maybe we have to make a proper format where we can questions can be asked.
By the Lord's grace, it will be very nice to see this all manifest nicely for this mission of trying to present a different perspective of reality to people. Just wanted to express my sincere gratitude for everyone gathering here today, taking your valuable time for this service. And if there's anything else anyone would like to say before ending.
Thank you very much, Krishna Kesava, for arranging this. Appreciate it very much.
Lovely to meet you.
Very happy to meet all our friends together.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Namaste. Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Take care.